Okay, good morning. Honorable Minister Santia Bradshaw, Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Mr. Maia, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, the OECS, and CARICOM Forum, Dr. Romel Springer, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Mrs. Betty Allen Headley, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education, Ms. Debra Dowridge, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw, Chief Educational Officer, Ministry of Education, Dr. Ida Mae Denny, Director of the Education Reform Unit, Ministry of Education, Deputy Chief Education Officers and other representatives of the Ministry of Education, principals of the Graydon Seeley and Darrell Jordan secondary schools and students, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome on this lovely breezy morning to the handover ceremony for the robotic kits that were donated by the delegation of the European Union. I wouldn't call out the whole long thing again. Under the 11th EDF. We will begin this morning with opening remarks that will be given by Ms. Debra Dowridge, Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy. I would like to invite Ms. Dowridge to come to the podium to give her remarks. Let me get this straight. Fancy.
Thank you, Madam Master of Ceremonies. Honorable Santia Bradshaw, Minister of Education in the Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Mr. Louis Maia, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, the OECS, and CARIFORUM. Dr. Romel Springer, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education. Mrs. Betty Allen Headley, Permanent Secretary. Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw, Chief Education Officer. Dr. Ida Mae Denny, Director of the Education Reform Unit, Deputy Chief Education Officers and other representatives of the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, invited principals and students of primary and secondary students, Ms. Destine Gay, Senior Technical Officer in the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning everyone and welcome. It is with great pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to this important handover event, which is being jointly hosted by the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, and the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. This morning, the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship will be handing over 72 solar robotic kits, which were part of the communication and visibility component of the 11th European Development Fund, the 11th EDF. These will be handed over to the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training for use in their new coding and robotics course, which is currently being launched. The primary objective of the 11th EDF was to provide support to Barbados in advancing its attempt towards energy self-sufficiency from local renewable energy resources. The program was directly related to Focal Area 2 of the Caribbean Regional Indicative Program, which focuses on climate change, disaster management, the environment, and sustainable energy, as well as priority sectors identified under the National Indicative Program for the period 2014 to 2020. Under the 11th EDF, the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship received a total of 3 million euros, of which 2,800,000 euros was allocated to budget support for policy development and reform, 100,000 euros for evaluation, and 100,000 euros for communication and visibility. This 11th EDF program was instrumental in the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship development of the Barbados National Energy Policy 2019 to 2030, which articulates the government's vision to transform this island to a 100% renewable energy and carbon neutral island state by the year 2030. This policy initiative also facilitated the implementation plan and renewable energy roadmap, which articulates the government's strategies to reach planned targets, goals, and objectives of the BNEP 2019 to 2030 policy. The budget support provided by the 11th EDF program was also instrumental to the advances made in the renewable energy sector, which began with the proclamation of the Electric Light and Power Act in 2015. This act provided the necessary legislative support for the establishment of a licensing regime to allow independent power producers to generate electricity and sell to the national grid. This has resulted in the progression to where we now have over 50 megawatts of renewable energy capacity on the grid, the majority of which has been due to the investment of private independent power producers. Small island developing states such as Barbados are mainly import dependent and rely on the international commercial market to meet their energy needs. We are indeed susceptible to disruptions caused by geopolitics, trade imbalances, and other momentary shocks, which can lead to uncertainty in access to energy and result in price fluctuations. As a nation, embracing a renewable energy philosophy changes and challenges the way we think about energy. It allows us to produce energy ourselves, which ultimately creates an entire paradigm shift in the local energy sector. This model highlights synergies and sometimes competing interests with other sectors such as finance, economics, the natural environment, technology, and social development. As a result, we must not only seek to eliminate the linked challenges in promoting clean energy and achieving sustainable development, but we must endeavor to forge synergies between all sectors, which is what the government of Barbados intends to do with the emerging energy revolution that is being led by the renewable energy sector. This energy revolution requires unconventional thinking, innovation, and entrepreneurship, It requires research and development in multiple sectors to achieve these synergies that are necessary for the fulfillment of our goals. Barbados has a history of innovation that is exemplified by the success of the solar water heating industry. We need to build on this success and use it to motivate our youth to do the same. We need to become more self-sufficient, and the only way to do that is to invest in our youth. Give them the skills to be innovative and forward-thinking to take Barbados to the next level. This relationship between energy and education is a critical link to our sustainable future. Business models in the Caribbean will change as it relates to energy as we modernize the electricity market and integrate renewable energy. New technical skills in this area will be needed to fill positions in numerous green jobs that will be created, and we want Barbadians to provide these skills and to do these jobs. The Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship cannot move forward in this endeavor alone. As we engage and collaborate, let us do so cognizant of the opportunity to exchange ideas as well as processes and to learn from each other. In so doing, we ensure that Barbados will reach its target of 100% renewable energy by 2030, while at the same time contributing to the lives and livelihoods of its citizens in a positive way. It is quite fitting, therefore, that the 11th EDF program, which gave us the Barbados National Energy Policy, ends with this presentation of solar robotic kits to the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, so that they can have the tools needed to equip this country's youth with the knowledge that they need to achieve our vision. These solar robotic kits will allow our science, technology, engineering, and mathematics educators to introduce concepts of renewable energy and demonstrate the principles of operation of motors, gears, and solar panels in a hands-on, practical, and fun way, which we hope will stimulate and motivate the minds of our young people to do great things. The ministry appreciates that they are well received and will be put to good use, and we want this to be the beginning of a continued collaboration as we seek to strengthen the synergy between energy and education. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Permanent Secretary, for those wonderful opening remarks. I would now like to invite Mr. Luis Maia, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of the European Union, to give some remarks. Hold on, let me get that for you.
Papers will not fly.
Yes, it is very breezy, but I don't mind the breeze.
There you go. Donc, the Honorable Santia Bradshaw, Minister of Education,
Technological and Vocational Training, Dr. Rommel Springer, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Ms. Betty Elaine Edley, Permanent Secretary, Ms. Debra Dowridge, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw, Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ida May Denny, Director of Education Reform Units, Deputy Chief Education Officers and other representatives of the Ministry of Education, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be with you this morning and be part of this ceremony where solar robotic kits are being handed over to the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. These solar robotics kits were provided through our recently concluded Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Budget Support Program with Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. This €3 million program, financed by the European Union and supported Barbados in advancing in its attempts towards energy self-sufficiency from local renewable resources. We really hope that these kits will be utilized by schools and integrated into their educational experience. Our children are our future, and it's vitally important that children of today have access to science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, what we call STEAM education programs. These STEAM programs have the capability of fostering creativity among our children in order to ensure that we prepare today's students to become innovators and inventors of tomorrow. They must take part in programs that nurture creativity. This will allow them to contribute to the green and digital transition of a sustainable and future-oriented society. Working with the robotics can encourage experimentation among our students. Without a little risk-taking and experimentation, many of the technological advancements that have occurred in the past would not have been possible. Many of these innovations were created by people who were told their ideas would not work, and their response was, let's try and see. Our children can develop this type of attitudes and spirits once they take part in these type of educational programs. Most importantly, we need to teach our students skills that they can use in the real world, and it's in ways that positively impact them and their loved ones. Exposing students to the benefits of solar energy and solar-powered systems is also a useful skill for their future. In 10 years' time, they will be young adults in a fossil fuel-free Barbados, we hope. And understanding solar power is contributing to solve national and global existential problems in the near future. Furthermore, solar energy and robotics can teach students the power of clean technology and innovation. So, when students encounter new technologies, they will be prepared to embrace them, to understand them, and to understand their advantages and disadvantages, instead of being hesitant or fearful. This will give them the upper hand in the global landscape, as the world is becoming increasingly tech-centered. This is why I'm extremely happy to be part of this handover ceremony this morning. We know that the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training has introduced coding and robotics at all levels of the education, and this is to be commended. This will ensure that students develop valuable skills which can be used in their future careers. I will also like to congratulate the Minister of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship for co-hosting, for showcasing this morning the vital relation between energy and education. As a father myself, I cannot agree more that the only way of going beyond in our individual and collective actions is to prepare our children to do the same. Thank you for your attention this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, for those wonderful words. And I agree, I wish I had kids like this when I was in school. They're really nice. Anyway, I would now like to invite the Honorable Minister Santia Bradshaw to give her remarks.
Mr. Luis Maia, Head of Cooperation Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, the OECS, and CARICOM, CARIFORUM. Dr. Romel Springer, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. Mrs. Betty Allen Headley, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. Mrs. Debra Dowridge, Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw, Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, and Dr. Ida Mae Denny, Director of the Education Reform Unit, Deputy Chief Education Officers, and other representatives of the Ministry of Education, distinguished principals, and of course our students who will be the recipients of these devices here this morning, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. The Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training remains committed to adopting a multifaceted approach to education that empowers our teachers and our educational leaders, but also focuses on the development of 21st century skills amongst our students. It is against this backdrop that it is my distinct pleasure to be the recipient of this donation of solar robotics kits from the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, as well as the European Union. The gift is timely since it lends support to our newly implemented coding and robotics initiatives, and it also provides a platform for our students to further develop skills in science, technology, engineering, arts, and the mathematics. With over 1,000 robotics kits already distributed to our schools, our education reform process is gaining momentum with the continuous training of teachers in coding and robotics, the recent dissemination of the coding and robotics curriculum, and the building of STEAM awareness through reinvigorated curricula. These solar robotics kits will deeply enhance our efforts by providing additional opportunities for students to be creative, to think critically, and to problem solve. And we look forward to the time when, through exposure to our reform curriculum, our students become innovators who can help us to devise homegrown technological solutions to our existing problems. These kits will provide opportunities also for our teachers to think outside of the box when creating their lesson plans. In fact, it is proposed that as part of the pilot project, teachers from 13 secondary schools will participate in a competition that encourages them to be creative in writing lesson plans that incorporate the use of these kits into the classroom. It is my understanding that a panel will then evaluate and identify the outstanding lesson plans written by the teachers and appreciably reward their efforts. The partnership that exists between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Energy has always been a fruitful one, and let me just say that this is not the first initiative of its kind. We would have worked with them in relation to the project at the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Technology. We've also been working with them closely in relation to the use of photovoltaics as well across our schools, and I'm sure that as we continue along this current trajectory, there will be many more opportunities for us to work very closely with them. Over the last 2 years, we've also had training for our teachers, our tutors, and education officers as well as in the provision of resources related to solar and renewable energy in our secondary and tertiary institutions with the support of the Ministry of Energy. We have worked together to build capacity in sustainable energy education through course enhancement at the Urdiston Teachers Training College, Barbados Community College, Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Technology, and the Barbados Vocational Training Board. This month, training for secondary school principals will begin through the Smart Energy Program on job opportunities in sustainable energy in Barbados. Beyond this, this collaboration between ministries continues as we seek to form linkages with the global resource company BHP in order to acquire equipment for our secondary schools. And we are embarking on the acquisition of digital oscilloscopes, 3D printers, and other equipment in order to strengthen connections to STEAM education, to expose students to new and emerging technologies, and to create avenues for innovation. These much-needed resources will also facilitate the teaching and learning of topics at both the CSEC and CAPE levels. Allow me at this time to again express my sincere gratitude to the European Union and to the Ministry of Energy as well for their invaluable contribution to our educational agenda and to the achievement of mutual goals and objectives. In speaking earlier to Mr. Maia, he pointed out that this was certainly groundbreaking for Barbados, and he wanted me to re-emphasize how important this morning is for our students here in Barbados, because across the rest of the world, it would appear as though Barbados is blazing its own trail in relation to coding and robotics across our schools. And I think that is to be commended, especially in the middle of a pandemic. In other words, we have left no stone unturned, despite all that we've had to manage to make sure that when we emerge from this pandemic, that our students are ready and able, as well as our teachers, to be able to be creators and innovators and persons who will be able to create the destiny that we want for this small island. I therefore look forward to our continued collaboration as we strive to create a future that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will now have the handover of the kits, so I would like to invite you back up, and Mr. Maia, Ms. Dowridge, and some students. We could take several. Sorry, let me wipe. Okay, so you.
Okay, no problem.
You're doing it correctly.
And I'm supposed to be here now anyway, because I want to do the closing. So.
Oh, no, you do this. Then you look at your
Kits themselves, 14 and 1, you can go online and you can buy them for your own if you want to. And the children will be able to explore and create these 14 forms, and from those forms they can then either re-engineer, they can go through troubleshooting, they can go through brainstorming, they can come up with solutions to problems that teachers will say, okay, let's say for instance, let's use sarcasm seaweed as an issue. So this is a what you call a surf bot, and basically when the sun hits the solar, the arms will turn the motors and propel the water to propel the boat through the water. So they can say to themselves then, how then can this work as it relates to, let's say, an environmental issue like sargassum? How can this help with that issue? So these kits are basically what I would call foundational things that would innovate and create thought for solutions that might be, let's say, environmental, local issues, or even international issues. So really and truthfully, there's a lot of stuff that can be done. Teachers have to be just creative in their thoughts and plans as to how they can get these things, get the students to be thinking about solutions to problems. Okay? So basically, that's what they do. And as I said, the children can get them in the school environment, but they can go online on Amazon. They're pretty inexpensive, and they can have them at home and they can create their own stuff. It is more of a situation where the children will get to learn and build and be innovative in their thinking. And that's basically what this is all about. So some of them move freely, others are a little bit more tight, but that will come with through brainstorming and finding solutions that make them actually operate properly. Okay? Thank you. Okay, you're most welcome.
Also, I just want to add to what Mr. Belgrave said. They are scalable, so they can be combined. You could use 2 and 3 together and build bigger models and expand it. So the sky is the limit.
I can add to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Additionally, one of the things that we are trying to get into our school system is the availability of 3D printers. And by having 3D printers, we can then make parts, use parts, and then you can also re-engineer and build your own bots based on having the parts available. So if we have things like 3D printers in schools, that would be of great assistance. Because at the end of the day, pardon? Oh yes, they are SJPI, but we're going to get more, I'm hoping. And when we have them in secondary schools at some point in time, we can grow this better and bigger.
Don't go too far. Can you tell how excited we are about these kits? Don't go too far, because I would like now to invite Mr. Belgrave to give us the vote of thanks. Oh, sorry.
That's no problem. Okay.
Wait, let me pass.
Yes. So I was doubly tasked this morning. I didn't realize that. So, let me get my papers under wraps. I'm tasked with delivering the vote of thanks. So, the Honorable Santia Bradshaw, Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Mr. Louis Maia, Head of Cooperation Delegation of the European Union to Barbados, the Eastern Caribbean, the OECS and CARICOM, CARIFORUM, Dr. Ramel Springer, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Ms. Betty Allen Headley, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education, Ms. Debra Dowridge, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw, Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ida Mae Denny, Director, Education Reform Unit, principals of the Graydon City and the Dowridge Secondary Schools and the students, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So, my task right now is just to give a brief vote of thanks. I would like to say thanks to the minister for her remarks and to acknowledge the presence of all the ministry staff. It is fitting that the handover takes place the day of October 1st, which is the beginning of Education Month. So for that, I would say we are blessed that we are here in this situation. I would like to acknowledge and to thank the members of the European Union Delegation to Barbados, to Mr. Luis Maia, Head of the Corporation Delegation. Thank you for your remarks offered during the ceremony, and also thanks for the donation of the solar kits. Additionally, thanks must be expressed for the remarks offered by Ms. Debra Dowridge, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Small Business, and Entrepreneurship. All remarks delivered were insightful and thought-provoking, geared on highlighting the educational and positive developmental benefits these solar robotics kits can offer and will offer to students in secondary schools. Special mention and thanks to the principals and students present for accepting the kits on the behalf of all the schools involved. I also would like to express gratitude and thanks to all persons involved in the planning and coordination of this handover event here at the Ministry of Education. These persons are members of both the Ministries of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, and Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. Special thanks and special mention to Mr. Fernando Carter, Senior Education Officer, Curriculum Section, other ministry officials, and also to Ms. Destine, Senior Technical Officer, Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. Thanks to the members of the Media Resource Department for the setup of all audiovisual equipment and peripherals. And at this time, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the media and note their efforts in making this worthwhile initiative made known to the members of the public. In closing, I would like to say that this donation shows the collaborative nature of the initiative between the noted ministries and the EU. The selected schools will, of course, put these solar robotics kits to good use by promoting innovation and creative thought, communication and teamwork amongst our secondary students. The kits can act as catalysts for the promotion of several new age and critical areas of entrepreneurial endeavor and social and economic development, which will indeed prove beneficial to all. So with that, I would like to say thank you. Your presence was valued, and as you go, be safe.